do this by way of a story. So many of the agile concepts that we know about today stem from Toyota, the Toyota production system. And this picture on the screen is what's known as an andon cord. And if you were to visit an automotive manufacturing plant, you would see the assembly line, and you would see cars coming down, and you would see the workers working on the cars, and you would see this yellow cord up above. And the workers are trained that if there's an issue on the line of any sorts, that you're to pull that cord, and what's going to happen is the assembly line will shut down, and all of the people that were working on the assembly line will not be productive. But you're supposed to pull the cord, because in pulling the cord, you're going to stop the line, and in theory, the quality problem is going to be resolved at the time it surfaced, and everything's going to get better. That's the theory. Well, I was fortunate enough to visit a Ford manufacturing plant about 6 years ago, and I went to the manufacturing line of where they make Ford F-150s, and I saw something that looked very much like this. It was literally the workers standing around the manufacturing line, the cord up above, the truck coming off, and I looked a little farther in a corner. I saw this pile of truck beds, and I looked in another corner. I saw this pile of fenders. And I said, something isn't quite working here. And so I asked the tour guide, I said, so can you tell me about that yellow cord? I knew what it meant, but I wanted to hear what she said. And she said, oh, yes, that's the andon cord. And she said, we're told that we're supposed to pull that cord when there's a quality problem. And somebody pulled it one time. And I'm telling you, they will never pull it again. They will never pull that cord again, because what happened was they were crucified, not literally crucified, but they were reprimanded for stopping the production line. And I thought, that's interesting. That's exactly the opposite of what this is intended to do. And I reflected back to the source, Toyota, and a story I was told by an individual by the name of John Shook, I believe. And John Shook worked at an American automotive firm, and he was asked to come work at Toyota, the only executive to ever be asked to work at Toyota North America. And part of that training was he was put on the front line, and he was actually putting tires on the Toyota Corolla. And he was trained, if there's any quality problems, pull that cord. He thought, yeah, right. But it was the training, very specific, you have to do this. And so one day, it was late in the day, he had been putting the tires on the Corolla, and one slips and it scuffs the inside fender well of a Toyota Corolla. And he looks and he sees a little scrape. And he says, nobody's ever going to know this. I can just let things go. But I was told to pull the cord. What should I do? And his heart starts pounding out of his chest, because he's got this quandary between getting severely punished for pulling a cord that he said he's supposed to pull, or letting it go. And he finally got the courage up to say, I'm going to pull the cord. And so he pulls the cord, and the factory line stops, and the lines start flashing. And within 15 seconds, the supervisor come and they say, Sir John, what happened? And he began to tell the story, and they all stood around and they watched him and they observed and they listened, and they said, was there anything else? And he said, no, that's it. And his heart's pounding out of his chest, thinking he's going to get punished. And they all took a step back and they started clapping for him. You see, it took enormous courage for him to pull that cord, because he had experienced pain in the past. It took him enormous courage. But what happened was, when the applause happened and that courage occurred, there was psychological safety. And that psychological safety said, you know what? When things are bad, I won't get punished. In fact, I might get rewarded for doing something that my natural instinct might say is a bad idea. And we know that Toyota is regarded as the highest quality product in the world. And many will say the reason for that is this andon philosophy, and this philosophy of a culture of courage and psychological safety. So let me show you this kind of conceptually in a graph. And if you can think of the horizontal line here as psychological safety, low on the left, high on the right. And you can think of this vertical axis as individual courage. And the way I want you to think about this is the horizontal axis, psychological safety, that is the culture of the team or the organization. It's the culture. And the vertical axis is the individual's choice. Much like John Shook had to make the decision to pull that andon cord, individuals on a team have to have the courage to say and do things that maybe are risks. And the more psychologically safe it is, the more likelihood that is to happen. So what happens here? Well, if it's not psychologically safe, nothing good happens. It's just that simple. It doesn't matter if they're courageous or not. Whoop, sorry about that. Let me go back here. But if it is psychologically safe and there's no courage, we find ourselves in the status quo. There's no growth and there's no improvement. However, if there's psychological safety and individual courage, then that team is going to have a high-performing team culture, and that team will perform at much higher levels than all other teams. The research dictates that. Personal experience dictates that.